My name is Amanda. I'm married to an incredible man named Mark, and together we have a little girl, Lily, the light of our lives. But things weren't always this happy. When I was 18, everything I thought I could count on suddenly fell apart. It happened the day I graduated from high school. I should have been celebrating one of the proudest moments of my life, but instead, that day became the one I'd never forget. The day everything changed between me, my stepmom Sandra, and my brother Ian. Right after the ceremony, still wearing my cap and gown, Sandra pulled me aside. She had that tight, fake smile she always used when she was about to say something awful. "Amanda," she began sweetly, "I need you to know that the college fund your dad left behind won't be yours after all." Just like that. No explanation, no sympathy, as if she were telling me the weather forecast. I stared at her, frozen. "What do you mean?" I asked. My dad had told me about that fund himself. He'd started it when I was a kid so I could go to college one day. Sandra didn't even blink. She just shrugged. "Well, Ian and I talked it over, and we think it's better if the money goes towards something more practical. Ian has a plan for it. And honestly, Amanda, you've always been more of a dreamer. College might not be the best fit for you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ian had always been the golden child. But this was beyond unfair. "That money was for me," I said, my voice trembling. "Dad wanted me to go to college." Ian, who had clearly been eavesdropping, stepped in. "Amanda, calm down. I'll make good use of it. I'm planning to invest it, start a business. Dad would have wanted us to be smart about it. Besides, if college means that much to you, just take out loans like everyone else." He said it so casually, as if stealing my future was no big deal. My hands shook, my heart pounded in my chest. "You can't just take what's mine. That's stealing," I shouted. Sandra looked around, embarrassed that people might be watching. "Lower your voice, Amanda," she hissed. "This is a family matter. Don't be dramatic." I wanted to scream, but instead I walked away. The rest of that day passed in a blur. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. My dad had died the year before. He'd been my rock. Without him, I felt completely powerless. The next day, I tried talking to Sandra again, hoping she might change her mind. But she just rolled her eyes and said, "Amanda, you're an adult now. It's time to grow up and take care of yourself. That money is being used for the family, and that includes Ian." When I told Mark about it, he was my boyfriend back then. He was furious. "They can't do that to you," he said. "That fund was meant for your future." But legally, there wasn't much I could do. The account was in Sandra's name, and without my dad, I had no one to stand up for me. Mark offered to help me fight it, but I told him to let it go. I didn't want to make things worse, so I pretended to move on. But deep down, I made a promise to myself. I would prove them wrong. I'd show them that I could succeed without their money or their support. The next few years were brutal. I worked multiple part-time jobs just to stay afloat while taking classes at community college. I couldn't afford a 4-year university yet, but I was determined to earn my degree, no matter how long it took. Meanwhile, Ian was living comfortably, spending the money he'd stolen. Sandra bragged about him constantly. "Your brother is so ambitious," she'd say. "You should learn from him." It made me sick. Mark stood by me through everything. He believed in me even when I doubted myself. By the time I finally transferred to a university, we were engaged. Sandra's reaction was exactly what I expected. "Are you sure you're ready for marriage, Amanda? It's a big responsibility, and you're still figuring out your life," she said in that same condescending tone. Ian, of course, added, "Maybe you should focus on your career, if you can even call it that." I just smiled and said, "Don't worry about me. I'm doing just fine." Those university years were some of the hardest of my life. I worked nights at a coffee shop, weekends at a bookstore, and studied whenever I could squeeze in a moment. I barely slept, rarely ate properly, and often wondered if all the struggle was even worth it. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered my dad's voice, calm and steady, reminding me why I started in the first place. They might have taken the money, but they could never take away my determination. It wasn't just the financial struggle that made those years difficult. It was the emotional weight of feeling completely alone. My own family didn't care whether I sank or swam. Sandra and Ian never once checked in on me. It was as if I had stopped existing to them. Sandra kept hosting her little house parties, bragging about Ian and all his big plans, while I was living off instant noodles and scraping together rent. I'll never forget the day I ran into Ian at the grocery store. He was standing by the butcher's counter, tossing expensive steaks into his cart, while I was holding a small basket with canned soup and store-brand bread. He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Still doing that whole struggling student thing, huh? You could have had it easier if you just played your cards right." I didn't respond. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I might have said something I'd regret. By my second year, things finally started to shift. I managed to land a paid internship at a local marketing firm. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to let me quit one of my part-time jobs, and more importantly, it gave me real experience in the field I wanted to build a career in. For the first time, I felt like I was actually moving forward. Even then, life was far from easy. My days were a blur of early morning classes, afternoons at the internship, and late nights studying or working coffee shop shifts. I barely had a social life, and exhaustion became my constant companion. One of the lowest points came right before finals when my laptop completely died. I couldn't afford a new one, so I borrowed an ancient laptop from a friend. It was so slow that even opening a document took minutes. I remember sitting in the campus library close to midnight, trying to finish a paper due the next morning, when I just broke down. I wanted to scream at how unfair it all felt. But then I thought of Sandra and Ian, how they'd probably laugh if they saw me struggling. That thought gave me the strength to keep going. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fail. The worst part wasn't just their indifference. It was the way they went out of their way to humiliate me. There was one Thanksgiving dinner I'll never forget. I hadn't planned to go, but Mark convinced me to show up, just to keep the peace. I should have listened to my instincts and stayed home. Sandra's house was full of her friends, and a few of Ian's so-called business partners. Things were going smoothly until Ian decided to speak up. "So, Amanda," he said loudly, smirking as he leaned back in his chair, "how's that glamorous student life treating you? Still making lattes and scraping by?" A few guests chuckled awkwardly, unsure if he was joking. My face burned with embarrassment. Before I could say anything, Sandra chimed in. "Ian, don't be mean," she said in that sugary sweet tone she used when she wanted to sound kind. "Amanda is doing the best she can. Not everyone is cut out for success right away." The way she said the best she can made it sound like she was patting a child on the head. I just sat there quietly, swallowing the lump in my throat, promising myself that one day I'd make them eat their words. Through it all, Mark was my anchor. No matter how bad things got, he was always there, reminding me why I was fighting so hard. I'd come home from long shifts or late study sessions completely drained, and he'd have dinner waiting for me, even if it was just grilled cheese or leftovers. There's one night I'll never forget. I had just failed a major exam, and it felt like everything was falling apart. I walked through the door, dropped my bag on the floor, and started crying. Mark didn't say anything at first. He just wrapped his arms around me and let me cry until I could speak. When I finally did, he said softly, "Amanda, this one test doesn't define you. You're doing something most people would have given up on a long time ago. You're allowed to stumble, but you're not going to fall. You're stronger than this." Then he made me hot chocolate and sat with me until I felt calm again. It wasn't just his words. It was his faith in me, the way he believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. By the time I finally graduated, I felt like I'd climbed a mountain. That degree wasn't just a piece of paper. It was proof that I could survive anything. I didn't invite Sandra or Ian to the ceremony. Mark and a few close friends were there, cheering as I crossed the stage. I remember thinking, they don't get to take this moment from me. It was one of the proudest days of my life. Not long after graduation, I landed a job at a mid-sized marketing firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well. And for the first time in years, I could finally breathe. Mark and I got married the following year, and not long after, we found out I was pregnant with Lily. It felt like life was finally falling into place. Sandra and Ian, I didn't hear a word from them. It was as if I no longer existed, and honestly, that was fine by me. Climbing the career ladder wasn't easy, but after years of struggle, it felt natural. I started at the bottom, managing small accounts nobody wanted. I worked hard, stayed late, and took on every challenge thrown my way. Slowly, people started to notice. One day, my manager pulled me aside after a big presentation. "Amanda, the way you handled that client, it's like you've been doing this for years. You've got a real gift for connecting with people." Her words meant the world to me, but at the same time they stung. Getting recognition from colleagues who barely knew me only reminded me how little I'd ever gotten from my own family. I'd sit in meetings where my boss would praise my work ethic, or I'd overhear coworkers saying things like, "Amanda's a star, she's going places." And I'd think to myself, why couldn't Ian have said that to me? Why couldn't Sandra have seen my worth? Instead, all I'd ever gotten from them were backhanded compliments and dismissive remarks. It was a hollow kind of sadness, knowing that the approval I had once craved would never come. Still, my life kept moving forward. After a few years at the firm, I was promoted to account manager, leading a team of my own. It felt surreal. A few years earlier, I'd been struggling to buy groceries, and now I was presenting strategies to executives. Mark celebrated every milestone with me. When I got my promotion, he threw a small dinner party at home with just us and a few close friends. "You've earned this," he said, raising his glass. "No one deserves it more." Around that same time, Lily was born. The first time I held her, everything else faded away. Looking at her tiny face, I promised myself one thing. I'll make sure you always feel loved, supported, and valued. Being a mom added a new kind of light to my life. While my world was finally shining brighter than ever, Sandra and Ian were still living in their own shadows. Things were starting to fall apart for them. Ian's big plans had crumbled, his business went under, and Sandra, who had always worn her social status like a crown, suddenly seemed less confident. Whispers began to spread that they were struggling financially. Ian had even moved back in with Sandra. I'll never forget the day I ran into them. It had been years since I'd seen either of them, and honestly, I wasn't prepared for how different they looked. I was in the organic aisle at the grocery store, picking out some fancy cheese for a dinner Mark and I were hosting. Lily was sitting in the cart, babbling happily to herself, when I turned the corner and almost bumped right into them. Ian was pushing a cart with only a few items: canned food, a bag of rice, the kind of groceries you buy when you're counting every penny. Sandra trailed behind him, looking worn out and older than I remembered. "Amanda," she said, her voice a strange mix of shock and awkwardness. Ian glanced up, and when his eyes met mine, his expression hardened. For a moment, none of us spoke. There I was, standing with a cart full of expensive groceries, Lily giggling beside me, while they looked like they were barely getting by. Sandra tried to summon her old fake smile. "You're looking well," she said, her eyes flicking to the contents of my cart. Ian just grunted, too proud to say anything. "Yeah, things have been good," I said casually, not trying to brag, but I couldn't help feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. The last time we'd crossed paths at a grocery store, I had been the one barely making ends meet while Ian flaunted his so-called success. After that encounter, things started to change. Suddenly, Sandra and Ian wanted to be part of my life again. It started small, Sandra calling to check in or sending awkward messages on social media. "Hi, Amanda. Just wanted to see how you're doing." "It's been so long!" She never mentioned our run-in at the store, but the timing said everything. Then came Ian's text. "Hey sis, we should catch up sometime. I've got some ideas I'd love to run by you." I ignored them. I didn't trust their motives. And honestly, I was still too bitter to even think about forgiving them. But they didn't stop. Sandra began calling Mark, pretending to be a concerned stepmom. "Just wondering how Lily's doing," she'd say sweetly. "You know I think about you all the time." Mark, being the kind-hearted man he is, told me maybe they were trying to make amends. But I wasn't convinced. It didn't feel like remorse. It felt like desperation. Like they'd seen how well I was doing and wanted a piece of it. Part of me wanted to confront them, to call them out for their hypocrisy. But another part of me was curious. How far would they go? That question was answered one quiet Saturday afternoon. When I pulled into the driveway, I froze. Sandra and Ian were standing right there in front of my house. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. They looked so out of place, like they didn't belong in the picture at all. Sandra clutched her purse tightly, her face drawn and tense. Ian stood with his hands shoved into his pockets, staring at the ground. Mark and Lily were at the zoo with his parents. I had stayed behind to finish up work for an important Monday meeting. I sighed, bracing myself for whatever this was. As I got out of the car, Sandra's face lit up with that overly rehearsed smile I knew too well. "Amanda, what a coincidence," she said, as if they hadn't clearly been waiting for me. Ian gave me a stiff nod, still avoiding eye contact. "What are you doing here?" I asked bluntly. I wasn't in the mood for small talk. Sandra waved her hand like my question didn't matter. "Oh, we just thought we'd drop by to catch up." "It's been too long, don't you think?" I stayed silent. She smiled wider, the kind of smile she used when she was about to manipulate someone. "Amanda, sweetheart," she began. "We were just talking about how proud your dad would be of you. You've done so well for yourself. Look at this beautiful home. You've really built something amazing." I folded my arms. I wasn't falling for it. After a few seconds of uncomfortable silence, Ian cleared his throat and finally looked at me. "Yeah. What Mom's saying is we've hit a bit of a rough patch. Things haven't been easy lately." "Rough patch?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "What does that mean exactly?" Sandra shot him a warning look, clearly annoyed that he'd said too much. "Oh, it's nothing too serious. Just a few financial hiccups. Ian's business didn't work out the way we hoped. And I've had some unexpected medical bills. We're just, well, a little strapped for cash at the moment." I could already see where this was going. "And?" I prompted. Ian shifted uncomfortably. "We thought maybe you could help us out. You know, just a little something to get us back on our feet." "Help you out?" I repeated, incredulous. "You're asking me for money?" Sandra sighed dramatically, her fake politeness slipping a little. "Amanda, you make it sound so harsh. We're not asking for charity, just a loan. You're doing so well now, and it's clear you can afford it. We wouldn't be asking if it wasn't really necessary." "Necessary," I said, my voice tight. "Like how it was necessary to steal my college fund? Or tell me I'd never amount to anything. Is that what you mean by necessary?" Ian's jaw clenched. "That's not fair, Amanda. We did what we thought was best at the time." I let out a sharp laugh. "Best for who, Ian? You? Sandra? Because it sure wasn't for me." Sandra pressed a hand to her chest, as if I'd wounded her. "Amanda, that's ancient history. Can't we just move past that? We're here now, trying to make amends. Doesn't family mean anything to you?" "Family," I snapped, my voice rising. "You mean the same family that left me to fend for myself? The same people who mocked me for struggling, who never once offered help when I needed it most? You've got some nerve standing here and pretending that word still applies." Ian's face turned red, his composure cracking. "You're not being reasonable. You've got everything now. A house, a husband, a great job. We're just asking for a little help. You owe us that much." "Owe you?" I repeated, my temper finally breaking. "I don't owe you anything. Everything I have, I built myself, with no help from either of you. You don't get to waltz in here and guilt me into bailing you out." Sandra's mask finally slipped. Her voice turned sharp and bitter. "I can't believe this. After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me," I interrupted, laughing bitterly. "What exactly have you done, Sandra? Other than make my life harder at every turn?" Ian snapped, his voice rising. "You're a selfish, ungrateful brat. We gave you a roof over your head and this is how you repay us?" I stared at them, stunned at their audacity. Then my voice went cold. "Get off my property. I'm done with this conversation. Sandra's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this, Amanda, she hissed. One day, you'll need us, and we won't be there. I stepped back, opening the front door. Good, I said evenly. I've been doing just fine without you. Sandra let out a bitter laugh. Fine, Amanda. Stay on your high horse. But don't forget where you came from. You're nothing without that fancy degree. We're the ones who made sure you even had a roof over your head to get that far. You should be thanking us. Ian sneered, his tone dripping with resentment. You think you're so much better than us now, don't you? With your perfect little family and your nice house? Don't get too comfortable, Amanda. Life has a way of knocking people like you down a peg. I didn't say another word. I just stepped inside and shut the door, locking it behind me. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace, because I knew one thing for certain. I didn't owe them a thing. The door that stayed closed. Stopped in my tracks and turned to face them one last time. You're right, I said, my voice steady. Life does have a way of knocking people down. You should know. You're living proof. With that, I stepped inside and closed the door firmly behind me. The sound echoed through the quiet hallway, final and absolute. From the other side, I could still hear Sandra muttering under her breath, her voice sharp with bitterness. Ungrateful, she hissed. After everything we've done for her, she'll come crawling back one day. But as their voices faded down the driveway, all I felt was relief. Deep, unshakable relief. For the first time in years, I truly understood the power of closing a door, both literally and figuratively, and this one I knew would stay closed for good. About a year later, Mark and I took Lily to an amusement park. The day was perfect. Bright blue skies, the smell of popcorn and cotton candy in the air, and the sound of laughter all around us. Lily was beaming, her tiny hands clutching a colorful balloon as she pointed at every ride we passed. Daddy, can we go on the roller coaster next? She squealed, eyes wide with excitement. Mark laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Maybe after lunch, kiddo. We were walking toward the food stalls when I saw him. Ian. He was coming out of a public restroom, wearing a faded park uniform with a name tag pinned crookedly to his chest. In his hands, he carried a mop and a bucket. His shoulders were hunched, his eyes fixed on the ground. He looked older, tired, like life had drained the confidence right out of him. For a moment, he didn't see us. But then, as we drew closer, he glanced up. Our eyes met. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by something else. Shame. Pure, unfiltered shame. His jaw tightened, and before I could even think of what to say, he turned abruptly and walked away, pushing the mop bucket in front of him as fast as he could. His back was rigid, like he was trying to hold on to whatever pride he had left. I stood there in silence, watching him disappear into the crowd. Mark noticed I'd stopped walking. Everything okay? He asked gently. I blinked, forcing a smile for Lily's sake. Yeah, I said quietly. Let's go find that cotton candy stand. As we left the park later that afternoon, my mind kept drifting back to that moment. To Ian's face when he saw me, to the way he couldn't meet my eyes. Memories flooded back. The insults, the smug smiles, the way he and Sandra used to talk down to me like I'd never amount to anything. For years I'd carried that pain around, letting it shape the way I saw myself. But standing there today, I felt free. I looked over at Mark, holding Lily's tiny hand as she chattered about her favorite rides, her voice bright and full of life. A wave of gratitude washed over me. This was what mattered. My family, my peace, my happiness. Everything I had, I'd earned through my own determination. Without Sandra's manipulation, without Ian's arrogance, without anyone's help but my own. And for the first time, I didn't need their validation, their approval, or their apologies. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of pity for them, for the choices that had led them to where they were. But it didn't last. They'd made their decisions, and they were living the consequences. I had no reason to look back anymore. As Lily tugged on my arm, her laughter filling the air, I smiled down at her. my heart full and light. Some doors, once closed, are never meant to be reopened. And this one? It stayed closed for good.